full-term pregnancy. It is just outrageous. But there's a way of dealing with it, and that is change. Like if we, for instance, if there was equal pay, but for everyone, we all got the same pay in our society, we would be all fine. Everything would be grand. You wouldn't have any. That may sound a bit fantastic, but we can certainly make a huge difference to the levels of inequality we have in our society. Similarly, with regard to healthcare, mental health care, I'm sure it's a huge factor in women, but also childcare. A woman who's 5 children, 6, 7 children, and give another child is just awful for her. But if there was childcare there, maybe she'd feel a bit calmer about it. So there are ways of dealing with, if we're really interested in and concerned about limiting abortion, there are ways of dealing with it. But they're radical ways and ones which most people who are on the pro-life side are not interested in doing. Anyway, that's it.
I was just going to say that when you hear the words winning and argument and the fight, sometimes when we're having these conversations around what's ahead, they can seem quite abstract. So I think it's about trying to always bring the conversation back to the people who've been ultimately excluded from this conversation, and that's actually the women themselves. So when we're talking about abortion and the fetus and when life begins or not, it's going back to that very central thing that if this affects every single woman who finds herself in a crisis pregnancy situation and who is faced with that ultimate decision that she knows that she's going to have to travel or put herself in a compromising position and take pills without medical supervision, and just the fact that every day 12 women have been forced abroad and that's just the reality. So I do just think the stories element to this conversation at the doorstep is so important, that we know that there's up to 200,000 women that have travelled from 1970. So I would just say, when you're getting bogged down in moralistic debates, to try and just bring it down and meet people where they're at. I wanted to just pick up on where the woman was saying that it isn't just the Catholic Church, that it's also a lot more people. And I kind of agree with that as well. That's why I mentioned this a la carte Catholicism that permeates a lot of Irish society. There's this huge middle, what I would call the intellectual class, that are very silent and very apolitical on issues because they're completely blindsided by their privilege. And I'm definitely someone, I work part-time for Lynn Ruan, and I've had a massive radical education on how my privilege had been informing my kind of stance on gender equality. I think that's very true for a lot of people in Ireland, and a lot of the kind of conversations around this issue, because ultimately they don't really understand issues of poverty. They don't really understand what that feels like. And what else? Yeah, just that in the final weeks of a referendum campaign, you have to let go of the things that you ultimately want to happen in a post-repeal kind of society. You have to understand, to get this over the line, that you kind of have to park some of your aspirations, that we're now in a national campaign kind of phase, which is the umbrella organisation is Together for Yes. So you really have to just think clearly about what is the best possible way to get this over the line, and ultimately to get the biggest win, to bring that kind of 30% of Ireland who may not vote, who may not think this deeply affects them, and who are at the moment this evening unsure as to where they stand. So I would just say, focus all of your energies on those people. Try your best just not to explode when you turn on the radio and are subjected to lies and hypocrisy, and ultimately really upsetting and damaging rhetoric. But yeah, I think Ireland will be, when we say that this is the last kind of bastion that the Catholic Church has a hold of us, the day after the referendum, there's still a massive legislative process that we have to fight for, and nothing is ever assured or certain. But I do think it will just be a very, very symbolic kind of societal sigh. And ultimately, I think the word or the sentence I'll probably say is "I told you so." But actually, one final thing I wanted to say is post-marriage referendum. I find it so interesting that politicians who were saying that gay marriage would dismantle family values and and that children really deserved a mother or father. I've never seen them continuing on that fight, to continue to campaign to regress those laws. And that's something I'm wondering after this, what those campaigners will be doing or investing their times or energies in. So that's something that I look forward to kind of watching. But yeah.
Our speakers, and especially Anna and Vincent, just